Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Today we have some Madden 21 franchise news to talk about and a little something it looks like for the future in Madden 22. The gameplay you're seeing is from my second channel where I am playing a Madden 21 franchise with the Houston Texans. It's a different style series that I do that I really enjoy, so you can go over there and check it out if you like. But today I want to talk about the update that is coming tomorrow to Madden 21. It is the third and final franchise update for this game. We have seen some small additions made in this cycle, like the playoff bracket and some league settings changes. This one does have a few things that I think are going to be very cool. And we'll dive into this news. The article is linked down below if you want to read through it all entirely. I'm going to basically summarize most of these things. But in the updates, there's going to be a tab now for League History, which is again something we used to have in franchise, where you're able to see the award winners from the past, the Super Bowl champions, and if you get deep into a series, it's very easy to forget these things. So there is going to be now something that shows that. They're located in a single hub with a year filter to see the champions and winners of all the awards from the previous seasons. Now, for existing franchises, it's not going to have the data from years you've already completed. So it's only going to be for future years you complete, or if you start a brand new franchise, then everything from your starting point on will have that recorded in the league history. I'm glad they've added this. It's always nice to see what's happened in past years that you may have forgotten. And I'd say also to include more than just the champions and some of the award winners. Like, I think even just recording who had the most passing yards or who won like the rushing title that year. Because the game is keeping track of that. If you check out player cards and see awards for players, it'll show you like led the league in passing yards in 2025. So that data is being kept somewhere, and I think that the league history should display all that kind of stuff. That's a good minor addition for franchise mode, and they're also now in this update going to have some things for trade logic and player value improvements. And there's a lot of detail here into what goes into trade logic and how teams are trying to place value on players based on age, position, development. And this is really one of those features that is never actually complete. You always have to be fixing things here. But what they're adding now in this new update is try to fix logic, especially revolving around the higher rated players. And we've seen some really interesting trades over the years now. 10 years ago, NFL trades were really boring. And now, I mean, the DeAndre Hopkins trade, we've seen so many things over the past few years, and trades that we would have never thought were realistic. But once Chip Kelly sent LaShawn McCoy to Buffalo for, who was it, Kiko Alonso, that's when everything started to really change. And in 2020, we saw Stephon Diggs and DeAndre Hopkins both get traded in very different kind of deals, and they were the two most productive receivers this year in terms of yardage. So basically they're saying that when it comes to trading for a star, they're trying to make it so there are packages where teams are wanting either high picks, high value players, or both. And I think if they want to achieve this even further, in Madden 22 and beyond, they're going to have to make it so more than 3 picks or players can be included in one side of a deal. I just don't think 3 is enough. Especially because a popular tactic right now in the NFL is to do pick swapping. So if you pick, say, 20th in the first round and another team picks 30th, then sometimes you swap first round picks because there's more value in one versus the other. And you can do a lot more pick swapping if there are less limitations on how much can be traded at once. So the first thing they list here is aligning the trade system to always use a player's best overall rather than using a team's overall. It says they fixed an issue where high overall and high dev players inexplicably did not have value due to player archetype differences. In situations where a team valued a receiving back but had a power back, the power back would previously crater in value for no reason otherwise. I think that archetype situation is an interesting one to value here when it comes to trading, because sometimes a player may not be the perfect fit, but can still obviously play that role, even if they're better at another archetype. I think at a certain overall, you kind of have to look past that, especially at a position like running back. I think weighing archetype makes a lot more sense when it comes to maybe lower rated players that you're trying to develop over established veterans who might already be a higher overall. They addressed a bug around offensive lineman value in general. I know that trading for linemen has not been very difficult in the past, so that should be much more of a challenge. Added logic for CPU teams to be able to recognize context around when a player is actually an upgrade when acquiring a player that is not a starter on their current team, but would be for the new team. Allows the CPU teams to better recognize when a lower quality caliber player is circumstantially starting, rather than a 73 overall getting the same base value for being cornerback 1 as a player like Stephon Gilmore would. So this kind of seems like some logic that obviously was a bit flawed, where sometimes a player is starting and they're not really starting caliber. And in regards to depth chart positioning, I don't think that should even be a factor when you're trading for a player. It should matter where they end up on your depth chart. Some teams are just deep at positions, and that's why players get traded. A team may have 3 starting caliber corners, and that third player might be second best for you. And it also at quarterback, like, that would totally mess things up trading for backups that might be starting caliber on your team. So that'll be something I think to test out with this update. And they also addressed an issue where players would be evaluated at the incorrect depth chart position on the acquiring team. That obviously has to be fixed for really any trades to make sense. They also addressed trading for same position value issues. When a user or CPU team trades a starter for another player at the same position who would start, they were not valuing the player as a starter for their new team. So I obviously did my off-season over the weekend on Madden 20, and we tried to do a receiver for receiver trade, and that really didn't work out. Although I did experiment with Boogie Turner in a first-round pick, and that still was strange in how they did not really value what we were trying to trade them. But that's a old game now, so not super relevant for this. Additional updates though for this logic: base values of every position at each depth chart slot for all 32 teams, including franchise-specific schemes. Addressed multiple instances of issues where lower overall players would be overvalued due to a team's need at a position, and made dev trait a full factor in the player's value calculation rather than a modifier for a boost. Honestly, some of these bullet points, I don't know exactly what they mean. I've skipped over some that I really didn't understand. And then based on whether your team runs a 3-4 or 4-3. 3-4, you want 1 defensive tackle, 2 inside linebackers. 4-3, it's the exact opposite. So that valuation matters as well for those defensive schemes. And this logic also impacts what positions teams look to trim roster cuts on in preseason. New values are aligned and intended to leave teams with a more appropriate number of players at each position per authentic expectations. Next up, we have draft pick values, and here it says completely realign the base value of draft picks to work with new player value changes and more closely align with NFL benchmark trade values. Previously, the second and third draft pick in an offer would have slightly less values. That's kind of strange to me. Impacts both pick for pick trades as well as picks for players or any mixture of the two. So not a ton of detail here in the draft pick values. What I would say is that they usually do a decent job of like trying to trade up in the first round and making sure you give up a ton to move up. I like how that has been, but they're too willing to give up second and third round picks for players. And I think that when it comes to like 6th and 7th round picks, oftentimes you get players in the real NFL, usually older or a bad contract. And in Madden, you really can't do a lot with a 6th or 7th round pick, so that's a tricky one, I think, to figure out. But certainly, hopefully, no more trades where it's like a 75 overall tight end for a 3, 6, and a 7. Check your transaction log if you have trades on in your franchise, and you'll see stuff like that for mid-70s rated players. It's so weird. Team philosophy value differences. Teams will have more nuanced perspectives of valuing players and draft picks. This creates a situational concept in franchise we see in the NFL. Just because a team is more open with trading a draft pick in a championship contention window doesn't mean that team should or does not still value draft picks at all as a core philosophy. I don't know exactly what all this is talking about, but there needs to be kind of a thing in Madden. I think 2K has this where it's like, what kind of a team are you? Rebuilding, contender, middle of the road. You gotta know where you are as a team and have like value differences based on how close you are to a championship. Hopefully that's what they're talking about. Next up, player value modifiers. Retuned value increase modifiers for players in the first year of their contracts and players who are rookies. Added logic to no longer apply bonus first year of contract value to players who are only signed to 1-year contracts. Previously, all players on 1-year contracts were receiving a value bonus that was only intended for players on long-term contracts. Age value tuning. Every player position received a new customized age value curve that keeps player value authentically updated as players get older in franchise. That allows them to replicate the impacted trade value declining for aging veteran players and provide CPU teams a way to devalue these players at scale. Each position is tuned differently. I will say this stuff sounds good, but I also think that this same logic needs to be applied to the depth chart when it comes to, say, do you play the 30-year-old 80 overall running back or the rookie 77? Franchise has an issue with getting young players playing time, specifically on those CPU teams where they're just playing the highest overall players. These teams need to operate with more of a long-term approach to their roster. Quarterback-specific value improvements. They added a new premium value modifier to raise quarterbacks' value compared to same skill positions. For instance, an 86 overall quarterback is a franchise-level talent, and they wanted to make sure that trading away or for a player at that level is recognized for being a more valuable and rare commodity than possibly a 90 or 93 overall at other positions, and that is a good call. Any franchise quarterback obviously has more value than almost any other player. So that basically covers everything here in this franchise update. Overall, minor updates. The league history is very nice to have, and the trade logic, hard to know until you test it out and try to make trades that you think are fair. But I'm glad that a lot of things have been done here to at least make the logic better. But the most interesting Madden-related news today, if you saw the video that is down below the article, it is a video EA uploaded with executive producer Sean Grady, and in the background behind him there is a screenshot of what appears to be work in progress Madden 22, and it's a screenshot showing staff management in franchise mode. We have been wanting coaching staffs in Madden for a long time. Again, it's been around a decade since that was actually in the game, and I don't know how deep it's gonna be, don't know any details, but the screenshot here, can't perfectly read it, but there's a spot for the head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and then a tab for player personnel. And each coach and the player personnel has something there for talent focus. There are game day goals for the coaches. Can't read it perfectly, but the offensive coordinator appears to have a rush for 75+ yard goal, and there is some award next to it that might be some sort of currency that's also in the upper right of this screen, but I don't want to look too much further into it. Looks like we're getting staff management for Madden 22. Can only assume that's their way of showing it here. And it makes sense. This is the final update for Madden 21. And then, hey, here's something that we're not going to say anything about, but it's easily noticeable that you can look ahead to for Madden 22. So I'm glad they've done these updates for Madden 21. While the updates have been small and have brought in some minor features, I'm still glad that they're there and will be a nice addition to the foundation of franchise mode. But hopefully Madden 22 has some heavy hitting updates and certainly a coaching staff, even with just coordinators right now, would be much appreciated. The coaching staff, you can do so much with it, and it's just so nice. Like in NCAA, the coaching staff matters a ton. And there are a lot of ways to introduce the coaching staff and have it really matter. I like the way NFL head coach does it, where it really impacts the progression for your players. That's a big part of it anyway. But I guess we'll have to wait and see on news. I suppose maybe April, May we could hear something, or June is usually when they release a lot of stuff around EA Playtime. But that is going to do it for this one, everybody. What did you think of the Madden 21 update? Are you enjoying Madden 21 franchise mode? And what do you think about what appears to be coaching staffs coming to Madden 22? That is it for today, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave a like and subscribe if you did. Again, you can check out my Texans franchise on my second channel, MrHurriicane LP, and I'm still playing Madden 20 with the Broncos franchise here on this channel. I just like playing it. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll see you next time.